Hello everybody and welcome back to HI Teaches Piano. Today we're going to be talking about 5 technical practice methods, strategies, tips, whatever you want to call it, that you can use for your pieces at any level. These methods will focus on achieving technical fluency, so I will not be covering as much musicality during this video. I have 5 different pieces: Schumann's Melody and Minuet in G, both pieces that we covered in our series already, Bach Invention number 1, and Chopin Etude Opus 10 number 4, to show that these different methods can be applied to any level of piece. The important part about using different methods to achieve technical fluency is to challenge your brain and fingers to approach a passage in different ways, which further secures the technique in your fingers. One thing to remember is that I'll be going over different strategies, but it's very, very important to mix up the different strategies using a combination of them, or else you'll get too used to one of them, and it also could get boring. So let's get right into it. Practice strategy number 1 might be very basic to some, but might be new to others, and so I like to call this chunking. And so the most important method to include in your practicing is the idea of chunking your piece into smaller sections, and depending on how long your piece is or what passage you are struggling with, your chunks can be different sizes. So for this one, I'm going to use Minuet in G. Alright, so as you learn your piece, you should definitely not spend a lot of your time going from beginning to end and repeating that, because if you start at the beginning and you practice all the way to the end, it's the things that you practiced in the beginning, by the time you get to the end of the piece, you will most likely have forgotten what you worked on in the beginning. You want to divide up your piece and work on the individual sections repeatedly before moving on to the next. And this gets your brain to focus and solidify in one section and only have to think about that one section before moving on. Let's use Minuet in G as a good example. So here in the previous course, we divided this piece into an A and B section. So maybe this is one large chunk that you can consider. Even this A to B section, which is 16 measures, would be considered a little bit too big for me, depending on what level you're at. So for example, you can even chunk it down into the first 4 measures. Right, and so when you practice down in the first 4 measures, you're only going to practice these 4 measures, and you're going to stop right on the downbeat of your next chunk. Right, so for example, that would be measures 1 to 5. Let me rewrite that really quickly. So here we go. Right, and then that's just one simple example of a chunk, right? And the most important part is stopping at the end of the next chunk, which is the beginning of measure 5, because this works out a transition point. This helps you get used to measures 4 leading into measure 5, and then once you start measure 5 into your next chunk, then you practice both chunks, measure 1 through 4 and measure 1 through 5, or 5 through 8. You already have gotten that transition period all down, right? And I think one of the most important parts, or another important part about this, is the concept of repetition. And so, for example, if I do this measures 1 through 4 one more time, stopping on the downbeat of measure 5, and I feel like that was pretty good. So I think another aspect is that you have to make sure that you repeat this many times, right? We can't just run through it once and kind of be satisfied and move on to the next chunk. A very old traditional technique is that like some people like to use is with like a stack of coins. So for example, if you have a stack of coins, and you have, let's say, 5 coins on the left side, on my left, then after you practice one passage and you get it really well, then you move the coin to the right side. If you do it again, the second time, you move the next coin over. But if you mess up on the third time, you have to move all your coins back to the left side, right? So this is one good way to practice repetition, to really see if you can master it and play through the passage 5 times without messing up, right? So that's kind of one. You might go a little bit crazy doing that, so just be careful not to overdo it. But that's one way to mess around with repetition. Great, yeah. So dividing your pieces into different chunks using the phrases of the piece is very much a thing that I would recommend you do in your practice. So we just did measures 1 through 4 there. Minuet in G is a great example because the phrases are very, very nicely laid out for us, right? So 1 through 4, 5 through 8 over here is another chunk, maybe measure 9 through 12, and then 12 through 16. Could be all 4 different chunks. Another cool thing that you could do is use a post-it notes. So I like to use this for a lot of younger kids where they kind of don't have that discipline to stop after the first chunk, and so they kind of want to just keep going. They have that autopilot kind of idea, and they just start playing when they feel like it's pretty good. So what I would do is I would use like a little post-it note. What's an example of post-it note? Well, I guess, for example, if we take the first 4 measures, then I would use a post-it note to hide the rest of measures 5, 6, 7, and 8, so that they can't even see it, so that they don't even have the chance to move on, right? And so if you find yourself that you can easily go on autopilot, or that you think you need this post-it strategy, I definitely would recommend using it as well. It kind of forces you to stop in your tracks before moving on to the next chunk. So that's practice strategy number 1, chunking, dividing your piece into many different sections. Seems pretty obvious, but we'll use this chunking alongside our other practice strategies to move on. Okay, so the next one that I would like to talk about is called slow practice. And we started the idea of chunking because every other method, like I said, uses a certain amount of chunking. My teacher in college was a huge advocate of slow practice, and so that's what I'm going to talk about right now. And so slow practice is exactly what it sounds like. You practice really slowly with and without the metronome, making sure you catch every note, every rhythm, and you can even catch the dynamics and phrasing if you are ready for that type of stage. And the trick here is to find a tempo that you're able to perform the chunk being practiced without any pauses or stopping. This allows your hands to go through all the motions it needs to in the piece, slowly and loudly, solidifying it into your fingers. So let's take an example here, and let's use Schumann's melody. So here I would do another form of chunking where I would just take the first 4 measures, kind of like what I did in Minuet in G, and I would go really, really slowly, making sure that I get every single note correct, and all these changes in the left hand and right hand all set to go. So let's start here. So if I was just learning this, I would go even this slow, making sure that all my notes and left hand and right hand are coordinated. I'm not really worried too much about the phrasing and all that stuff, just trying to coordinate my hands, getting all the finger changes. Good, right? And that would be number 1. And so not only does this solidify your muscle memory, but this is also a good way to check your rhythm to make sure that you're nice and steady. And this could be done with a metronome, even without a metronome too. So here you can see me lining up my 8th notes alongside my quarter notes. And this slow practice really lets you narrow down into focusing on that. And I think it definitely is good to practice with a metronome, especially if you have the tendency to kind of start rushing. And this also confirms your rhythm and increases the coordination between your 2 hands. So so let's do that again, and let's try it with a metronome this time. So for example, this piece doesn't really go too fast, but let's say if we set it to 60. Okay, if you're learning this piece and this is too fast for you, you want to find a tempo that's not too fast, not too slow, something that you can play without too many errors, and that you want to make it all the way to the end. So here we go. And there you go, right? So even there, I caught myself rushing a little bit in measure 2, and so I would really take it slow and check all those things off. The more you get comfortable with the technique, I also found this tip to be really great for the ears, as it gets you listening to the harmonies, listening to the chord progression, which is always beneficial. And throughout any form of practicing, you want to be very active with your listening, right? It doesn't seem like it, but I think sometimes when we think about working on technique, we kind of turn off our ears and just go on autopilot, making sure the fingers are working. But this is also a really good time to use your ears. So make sure you don't turn them off while practicing, and be very active listening for those chords and harmonies. One last thing to kind of go with the slow practicing is, as you get more used to the piece, you can use the metronome to kind of inch up your tempo. So I guess this removes the idea of slow practicing. So you would start slow, and then you would slowly inch up right, by clicks. And so for example, a good maybe a good increase is by 4 beats per minute, and you can slowly move up there. So 60 to 64. There you go. And then after I feel comfortable with that, I would go 64 to 68. And then after that, you would keep moving up by 4 clicks. And the point is, you're not really supposed to feel that much of a difference, right? Like if I were to try and snap you 60 and 64, it would be very, very difficult to find the actual difference of them. And I think that's really the point of doing this, right? Is that you are increasing your tempo, but so slowly that you don't feel it. And then eventually, once you get over a large amount of tempo difference, you'll really see that that there was a significant difference. And I think by doing it very incrementally like that, it gets your fingers used to adjusting very, very slowly. And then eventually you can get it at a really fast tempo. So this is 72. So now this is our clicks, right? And so here I definitely feel the tempo change. Right? So from 60 or 68 to 72, I might not have felt that much of a difference. But if I go back all the way to 60, where I started in the beginning of this, now this feels really, really slow to me. So just in that small amount of work there, increasing the tempo incrementally really made a big difference. And of course, I know the piece, and so the results might not happen this automatically for you, or it doesn't even happen automatically for some of my pieces. But this slow practice into incrementally increasing the metronome tempo is a really good strategy. And so that works for a Schumann's melody. It could work for minuet in G. If we go for a little bit more of an advanced piece, like Chopin Etude Opus 10 number 4, something that I've been studying for a good amount of time, is this is something I would use especially in this piece too, right? So for example, if we start in the beginning, I don't even know what tempo I can play on this. Let's see. Right, so I'm gonna stop there, 2 measures, because I'm chunking and I also don't want to embarrass myself on the video and on stream. But this is good. So that was another 2-bar chunk that I did right there, and I did that at 80 beats per minute. Okay, so let me do it one more time just to get used to it. Okay, and so I just did 2 practice methods. I'm doing the slow practice, making sure I get all the rhythm, all the hand coordination down, all the practicing going through all the motions, and then now I'm gonna add the incremental metronome increase. So now we're going to 84. So here I don't really feel that much of a difference yet. Good, I messed up a little bit there, so I would do it. Remember, we don't want to throw out that idea of repetition. Good, I felt pretty comfortable with that. So now let's go to 88. So from 84 to 88, I shouldn't really feel that much of a difference either. Okay, and then you would keep going up, etc. So 92. Okay, and then we keep going up, For example, let's just skip to 102. There you go, right? And then for example 102, and then we hop down to 80, you can really see that those 22 clicks that you've been doing slowly over time, there's a really huge difference there. And of course I'm cheating a little bit because I've studied this piece as well. I'm taking that a lot down under tempo, but you kind of get the point that that the incremental differences is that you're not supposed to feel that difference there. And then, yeah, when you study with your piece, it's not going to happen automatically, but it's definitely a good approach to take it slowly like this. Great. So next we have strategy number 3, which is rhythms. Oh, let's actually go back to, actually we can do Bach invention number 1 for this one. So this one is a cool practice strategy that I learned late high school into college. And so this practice strategy has to do with changing the rhythms of the passage. And for example, let's do maybe we'll focus on measure 3 and measure 4 over here with the right hand. And so what this rhythm changing thing does is that it emphasizes different notes in a passage, which helps to solidify your fingers, because each of our fingers are not equally strong, right? For a lot of us, maybe our 4th and 5th finger are a little bit weaker than the others, and so when we're trying to make a passage really smooth, like in a Bach invention, fingers are just gonna kind of stumble sometimes. And so by changing these rhythms, it gives us the different emphases. And so like an example of rhythm change would be like long, short, long, short, long, short, etc. So you would go long, short, 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 long, short. Stopping on the downbeat of 5. Remember, you always want to stop on the downbeat of the next measure or of your next chunk so that you're able to work on the transition. And the reason this works, and so this rhythm changes puts different emphasis at different points of the run. And it's very important that you switch up the rhythm so that you make sure each finger and note is getting its turn to be emphasized, right? If I just kept doing long, short, long, short, long, short the whole time, I'm only emphasizing the E, G, E, F, right? So here, after you get used to that, you would do it the opposite. So you could do short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long, etc. Short, long, 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 short, long. Okay, and then you kind of work on both of them, and then after a while, after you practice through those, remember doing your repetition, and then you should always summarize it with practicing it nice and smoothly. And each finger should be equally just as played just as well, right? And then so that's the idea of rhythms. You can change up different rhythms, right? You can do maybe I don't know, maybe since we're in groups of 4 16th notes, maybe you can do like 3 really fast 16th notes and then stopping on the F, or triplet 1, or I guess triplets, triplet 1 or triplet 1, triplet 1, so that's stopping on the end. Or maybe you can do 1, triplet 1, triplet 1, triplet 1. So there I held on the first note and did 3 faster notes. And then I ended at measure 5, right? So being really creative with those rhythms is always good. Right, so and then here you can also implement the other practice methods that we talked about, like chunking. So we already did chunking here by focusing on just 2 measures, and then you can even include like slower metronome speeds, right? So here you're just changing the rhythm, right? So bum 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 bum, long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long. So here you're really going for the technique, and you're really not concerned with what the rhythm is on the page, right? Because we're obviously changing it, and then you can just increase the tempo. So this implements the slow practice method, and as well as the incrementally increasing the metronome. So I think making sure that you switch up the rhythms is very good. And then this one, I typically do this one with just one hand, or whatever hand I'm trying to fix the technique on. I guess it technically works doing it with 2 hands, but it might just be a little funky. I guess it works out as well. So if you'd like to try doing the rhythm change with both hands, I'm sure that will not hurt at all, right? And let's do short long, 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 short. Okay, and then if we just do everything nice and smooth, I guess we can do it in metronome. And then after changing up the rhythms, you want to definitely conclude with going back to the proper rhythm of the piece to make sure that what you were aiming for, which was evenness in all your runs, was achieved after your rhythm change. All right, and then for example number 4, or practice method number 4, is what I like to call, or my teacher used to call, burst practice. And this one I find really, really fun and effective. And I think about the important part about all these practice strategies methods is like we talked about, doing a mix of all of them so you don't get bored. And one small problem that I find with slow practice is that eventually the motions you go through while playing slow is going to feel different than playing the piece at tempo, and that's just how it is, right? Which is why we kind of paired the slow practice with the metronome increase. And so this idea of burst practice gives your hand and brain kind of like a taste of the piece at tempo, or sometimes faster than the normal tempo, but only for a short burst of time. Let's just go back to the Chopin etude for this example. So remember, you can apply this to any of your pieces. Maybe you can do it on the other piece too. So let's do the beginning again. And so here we would use a smaller type of chunk, which is maybe typically 1 or 2 beats only, and play the passage at tempo, even if that's not where you are yet. So for example, if I was struggling here and I could only play it at this tempo, so we'll just do beats 1 over here. Let's see if I can show you. We're just gonna do this pickup beat, right? So all I'm focusing on is this pickup beat. And when I studied this piece for real the first time in college, I literally spent so much time just on getting that nice and solid. Okay, so for example here, we're gonna do it with, in this case, 1 or I guess 2 beats, and this will help you go through all the motions that you'll eventually be going for to play in the piece. And so sometimes doing these burst tempos, bursts faster than tempo is helpful too, because when you go back to your normal tempo, it'll feel a lot slower, right? So here you're gonna go. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a faster burst. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, and you want to practice that many repetitions until you get it, and then after that, we're gonna go do the next one. So remember, always stopping at the next beat so you can practice the transition. Then here we're going to do the next one. C, maybe let's do to the next beat. So we'll do right. Okay, stopping on the next one. Right. So this is our 2 beat burst. Okay, and then right. So if I was practicing this slowly, right, so although I'm going through the motion slowly, trying to get it at this fast tempo was already a little intimidating for me, and it definitely feels different, and you have more of that energy, and yeah, it's just gonna feel different when you go faster. So if we practice those 2 beats, now we put all 3 beats together, starting from the beginning. Now we just created a bigger chunk. See, so here I'm missing the C, so now I'm trying to aim for the C in this burst. And then now we just start adding more chunks. And then here, so here I'm starting on the 2nd beat of the first full measure, into the 3rd beat. So see, I actually need to do this, because here I can do this all day, and you guys saw me do this earlier at like a 100 or whatever, but trying to do it a little bit faster really feels different. But this is closer to what the tempo is actually supposed to be of this piece anyway, so focusing on beat 2 and 3. Okay, and then so now if I put it together, now I'm a little bit more prepared for the faster chunk. And then you just keep doing. Okay, Okay, so here, right? So here's already a passage I'm starting to struggle with this burst. So I would take this section and then just go another 2 beats. So you can even do it with just one hand, because here I can do this all day, right? I can do this all day for you guys and get it, right? But the slow motions, although helpful, at some points it's gonna feel different when trying to go faster, right? So trying to do these bursts really helps you. So now I put both hands. And yeah, so I think that the progress might not, I don't think it's faster than slow practice. I think you have to have a healthy balance of doing both of them. And going through this whole page of this kind of burst practice can be very painful and slow, but I really think this is one way to get used to playing your piece at the tempo it's supposed to be. And this is also a way that that like you get the most real feeling as you're practicing the piece. And yeah, so after the burst practice, I think it's very important also to go back to whatever tempo you're more comfortable with, right? So I was definitely pushing the tempo more than I was ready for in those small bursts. So when I take it back to now the normal tempo, everything should feel a little bit more controlled, and you should be more confident to go faster because you just really did each individual chunk at a faster speed. You worked each transition, right? When we went from beats from the one beat to leading to the next beat, then this beat leading to the next beat, right? So you already worked the transition at a really, really fast tempo. So if you take it back, your normal tempo is gonna feel a lot slower and feel a lot more manageable in those fingers. Cool. All right. And then I think, yeah, and so my last tip, my last practice strategy is simply to let it rest. And there are times when you can get very, very absorbed and too invested in grinding out the technique. And sometimes you will notice that your progress starts to move backwards a little bit, right? That's like fatigue, and you get tired, your brain gets tired, your fingers get tired. And this is really just a good indication that you need to take a break. You know, a lot of these Chopin etudes or whatever piece you're learning, there are times when you can probably just practice for hours and hours and you just feel like it's not making any progress. And after doing a lot of the technique work, sometimes it's really just that your brain needs to time to passively process it and remember all the work that you did. Your brain is still really, really active when you go to sleep, and it works to put all that kind of new information you just practiced into your muscle memory, that myelin kind of builds up. And you will surprise yourself that when you wake up, it'll be much better. Sometimes after I practice, I have a really long practice session, I just take a quick nap and I wake up and I feel a lot better. And when I run my pieces again, it just goes a lot smoother. So using all these practice methods correctly and smartly is very important, but of course we don't want to overdo it and let your brain absorb all the information. So that's also why I think it could be important to work on several pieces at a time. This is kind of getting to a different topic, but working on different pieces or sight reading book or scales arpeggio, so you still have other things to work on while you're letting your brain reset from working on that one really technical piece that you have. Yeah, and that's a simple but I think underrated tip there, or practice strategy there. So giving you guys an excuse to take a break. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have that's all I have for you guys today. So please remember to like this video, subscribe, and even share it if you enjoyed. It really does help a lot. If you guys like any of these practice tips and start using it in your own practice, let me know in the comments below. Also feel free to share your own practice strategies. These are just 4 or I guess 5 of the ones that I use, but there are a million out there, and I'm sure people have maybe better ones and whatnot. And yeah, so don't be afraid to try all these new ones. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, well, at least you tried it, and you probably still got benefit in your technique from using a different method. And the most important part I can't emphasize enough is that you don't get stuck practicing your piece one way to keep that brain and fingers from going on autopilot. So last little plug in here is we do have a new piano learning Discord where you can share your performances, your practice logs, any questions about the piano, or kind of just a place to hang out and chat with other musicians, people from the stream, people from the YouTube channel. So if you're interested, the link is in the description below. And let me know what you want me to cover next week, and I'll see you guys in stream or in the next video. Take care.